Okay.
Sir, you are host now.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Feroz. If
Okay,
you
sir.
want to, you can go. Thank you. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
sir. Thank
Okay, I think we can start because there are people who have joined. And today we are looking at diaspora influences on policy making. Everybody is able to hear my voice?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. And please tell me whether when the slide moves, did the slide move?
First one is okay.
I moved on to the second? Did it move?
No,
No, no, sir.
Okay, hang on. There is some problem with this slide. I think now it should move. Okay, did it move now?
yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
I picked up one more definition or one more way one can distinguish between diaspora and transnationalism because I was seeing multiple opinions and a lot of gray areas in diaspora and transnationalism. So, in another article, in a journal article, I read this as one of the differences. Actual exchanges of resources, marriage visits across borders between members of a diaspora themselves or with people of homeland are transnational activities. What we were typically talking about, all diasporas being transnationals in a way, because inevitably there's an exchange. To be transnational means to belong to two or more societies at the same time. At that moment, the diaspora functions as a transnational community in the above. That is where diaspora acts. But there is also a process whereby exchanges do not take place, sometimes over many generations. So, for example, a lot of people in, let's say, Suriname or Africa, South Africa, do not want to be quoted or classified as Indians. So, they do not have these exchanges. However, a lot of them maintain an identification with the homeland, an identification, and co-ethnics everywhere. There is only a diaspora. There is no transnationalism there. In this way, not all diasporas are transnational, but transnational communities arise within diaspora. So that's another perspective on how to look at diaspora and transnational. For people who have joined late, I have another definition I picked up from another write-up between transnational and diaspora, and I came across this very interesting article in Al Jazeera by Regimon Kuttapan on 6 January 2024. It's a very interesting article, and it shows the transnationalism practiced here in particular, this particular case, the Kerala workers, migrant workers were working in the Gulf, and they are sending back tiger balm and axe in oil which are Singapore based, and imperial leather soap which is based in Britain. And these are symbols of hope, love, and connection for their families back home in Kerala. And interestingly, there is a specific way in which this is sent. Whenever migrant workers are coming back home, before they check in, they travel to this mall, which is the Lulu Mall. Lulu Mall owner is also a Keralite. They go there, buy these three items, and all the items have to be packed in a brown box on which a particular label. There is a set convention about how these things are sent back home. So a lot of Keralite migrant workers, when they travel back home in a flight, you will see all of them carrying these brown boxes. So for people from Kerala would definitely know about it, but for people who are not from Kerala, this was a very interesting story I read. Yes, so much so, then I got across there is a movie a 2015 movie. South film star Mammootty, who is shown carrying this brown box, Dubai to Bombay. So, in fact, this story also had the visual of that Air India flight, which crashed in Kochi or Kottayam, one of the two airports. And next to the crash were all these brown boxes. So it's a very interesting, kind of story which came. And think about it, Al Jazeera was covering it. So this is a sign of transnational activities. I thought I'll share it with you guys. And then I came across the Norca website. Norca is the Kerala, engagement website run by Kerala government, by which it engages with the Keralite or the Malayali diaspora. It's a very interesting website. In fact, if any one of you is interested to kind of write an article or write an academic article on how your particular government, your state government, so whichever state you are from, if you're from Bihar, if you're from Punjab, how they are engaging with their diaspora, and does that engagement work in terms of what is the feedback of that engagement. So is Swadesh here? Swadesh is not here right now. So, in case you want to do it from your state, you can, look at, and if you want my help, we can do a joint paper and get it published somewhere. Uh, Writing, such stories in form of academic article or a journalist story is a very interesting thing. You get a lot of insights. So this is the Norca Roots website. It seems to be a fairly detailed website. In fact, look at the services they are offering: an insurance card, an insurance policy, skills and training, certificate attestation. So I did briefly check the website, and it seems to be fairly detailed with a number, a toll-free number, an international number, email ID. So it fairly checks all boxes of engagement. So let's come to the chapter. Again, inevitably, when diasporas are there, they have a connection with the homeland. And once they are doing some sort of an economic transactions, anytime there is money involved, obviously these people would have a certain amount of leeway. And how does this engagement work? Let's look at this. As mobilized groups with strong sense of identity, diasporas can play a role both in domestic and international politics. See, inevitably, earlier it was generally thought, and it was not just in India, across the world, it was generally thought that once people leave, a lot of countries felt that they were traitors, that they are leaving their country. We gave the name of brain drain. There was a negative connotation with migration and diaspora. With globalization, with interconnectedness, with faster communications and transportation, all countries are now realizing that diaspora becomes an asset, not just in terms of remittances, which come back home to run the economy, but a whole lot of places. It's something like this. You are living in a society where there is a person living. That person leaves the society and goes into a neighboring society. Now, this particular society, the first society, has some transactional issue with the next society. They will inevitably take the services of the guy who has moved from the first society to the second society, because they know him, he knows them, there is a connection, and he'll be able to negotiate in terms of the new society that he is staying in, a homeland and a hostland. Both the domestic politics of the homeland and domestic politics of the host states regarding issues that are of interest to them. And inevitably, because they are now spanning societies, they will be interested in both. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of non-resident Indians make make pertinent or regular comments with regards to domestic politics, with regards to what should be done or what should not be done. Diaspora is an investment which is economic, cultural, political, emotional, and social. Its importance is expressed in areas of political lobbying, economic growth, and transfer of information. So becomes an interesting thing. So no longer does a doctor or a neurosurgeon who has left, let's say, India and gone and settled in the US and has become a citizen of US be a totally write-off for the Indian ecosystem because A, he has a connection back home. Now he can transfer information, he can lend his expertise to fraternity in India. So he's connected, he's away and yet connected. So it's a very important resource. Position as an enhancing agent of legitimacy for economic actions at home, economic actions, contributions to the host country, ample scope for politics. And because there is an economic angle to it, there's an ample scope for political exercises. So, inevitably, once the person is paying tax and sending remittances, now he feels he or she has a right to also involve himself or herself in the politics of homeland as well as hostland. Because after all decisions are going to impact him or her. Guys, you are able to see my slides move now?
Yes, sir. It's the
Okay.
introduction slide right now.
Yeah, enhancing agents of legitimacy for economic actions. Can you see that now?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Cultural relations help open up many contact networks. As I said, if a person goes from one society, goes into another society, now there is a contact which is out there. And inevitably, both people will tend to trust this person. No country can afford to ignore the interest of its diaspora, contributes massively to its economy. For example, the Indian diaspora is the highest remitting diaspora in the world in the form of transfer of technology, foreign direct investment. There are multiple ways they engage. Countries such as China or India are seeking to attract their citizens from abroad to contribute to economy. Tool for foreign policy is relative recent. One of the reason why tool for foreign policy per se till now was a very elite club. It was, foreign policy was decided by a set of bureaucrats or a set of politicians sitting much far away from people. With the advent of internet and social media today, the distances between any two countries, irrespective of a geographical distance, is in the communication is instantaneous, and hence foreign policy also has to attune with what is going on in terms of communication. So today, any person, state, non-state actors, international organizations, NGOs, everybody influences foreign various policies of government. So it has always been told that diasporas are soft power, but not a sufficient condition because foreign policy outcomes are not united. Success depends on other nations. Interests play a crucial role in how success. Inevitably, a foreign policy is typically what are a country's interests. And inevitably, now the diasporas. So we will see there are two kinds of opinion as to how diasporas are influencing foreign policy. I have a case study of US in terms of US diaspora influencing or ethnic groups influencing US foreign policy. So look at this organization. This is again an organization of Malayalis in America. Uh, Again, a website with the email ID, with a call us now, and they are organizing meetings with the Kerala CM. It was just that I was looking at the Kerala model, and that is why these two examples are from Kerala. They are meeting the chief minister, they are meeting actors, uh, uh, Federation of Malayali Associations of America. So obviously there are more than one association. And if you notice, look at the kind of, uh, you know, uh, look at the width of things they are doing. They have regional associations, they have councils which are dealing with women forums, senior forums, youth forums. So you can imagine that these people will certainly be lobbying for their interests in the host country. And obviously, because they are meeting the C or they have been able to organize a meeting with the CM or with regular film stars, they certainly would be having a say, or they would have people lobbying in their homeland. So it works both ways. Of particular interest are diaspora efforts to affect political environments in their home and host countries through the remittance of funds, lobbying, and dissemination of information. The question is not should ethnic group influence foreign policy, but how they affect foreign policy. What are their goals and why do they mobilize? So inevitably they will influence. But how do they influence? How effective is their influence? How they mobilize is what needs to be studied more. There are many reasons such diasporas have become more prominent. As I was saying, new communication technologies have improved ability to mobilize. So today you can make a WhatsApp group, you can have a Facebook group. These are very effective and real-time mobilizing strategies. And multiculturalism policies in receiving countries have revitalized ethnic pride and assertiveness. These multicultural policies, also a certain amount of democracy, libertarianism, also revitalizes ethnic pride and assertiveness. So the scholar Milton J. Esmond described 9 diaspora-related problems that may trigger tensions between sending and receiving countries. Obviously, now when these connections are happening between diaspora, homeland, and hostland, now these could also create tensions. Say, for example, maintenance by some members of the diaspora communities of transnational existence. Diaspora's attempts to control policy in their country of origin. Attempts of diaspora to control policies of their new host countries or the policies of foreign organizations to behave in support or opposition to the interest of their home country's current government. So inevitably, this could be points of friction. Let's look at further. Examples of such politically active diaspora communities are the Jewish, Greek, Cuban, and Armenian American associations, some of the strongest lobbies in Washington, D.C. In fact, in US and Europe, lobbying is a legal activity. What we in India call middlemen. We don't have lobbying as a legalized activity. Out there, it's a legalized activity. Diasporic Iraq groups and individual played a crucial roles in encouraging American military intervention in Iraq in 2003. So this is being told by Stephen Wojtowicz, anthropologist and director of Max Planck Institute. This is what he writes. That diasporic Iraqi groups actually played an encouraging role for American military intervention. Then attempts of home government to use their diaspora to support their political or economic objectives, which could be a friction point. Diasporas may seek their home government's protection to support its strategic or economic objective. A host government can call on resident diasporas Diasporas may contribute to farmers' homeland's growth. So these are all things which could, create issues. The home government can request host government to restrain member of diaspora from hostile actions. What typically happened between India and the US, India and Canada, India and UK, may participate in various illicit transnational activities such as terrorism or organized crime. Now, inevitably, if there is a set of, so for example, the Cuban diaspora was very active working against the Cuban government, which led to a lot of friction between Cuba and America. The issues of homeland is another significant conditions influencing the degree of impact that a diaspora can exert on foreign policy. And today, with faster communications, inevitably, whatever happens in the homeland starts affecting diasporas. More so, for example, the majority of the world's population is divided into ethnic homeland territories. Now, ethnic homeland territories may or may not be contiguous with territorial integrity. Territorial in the sense, say, for example, in Manipur, the Kuki are there in Manipur, but the Kukis are also there in Burma. And in fact, one of the points of friction which was coming out in the media is that they were saying that cookies from Burma are coming in and creating trouble. These are perspectives. The territorial boundaries of states were superimposed with a cavalier disregard for ethnic domestic nations. So, for example, the Kurds are there in Syria, they are there in Turkey, they are there in Iraq. They want to have a homeland. Inevitably, Turkey has a problem with Kurds. Syria, now there's a free Kurdish state out there. After the Iraq war, a demarcation line, but still Kurds do not have a homeland. Now, that is how the ethnic boundaries span multiple nation boundaries, which leads to friction. Diasporas can be directly involved in promoting and encouraging conflict because financial support from different parts of a diaspora to insurrection movement or attempts by a specific family to remove them. Remember, it works both ways. A faster communication works both ways. A faster transportation can work both ways. Now with globalization, with money moving around very fast. Now, money can also, so for example, today, an Indian can send money abroad through their normal Indian accounts. In fact, if you do an online transaction, you can actually send money abroad. Two or more diasporas might be pitting against each other when there is an inter-ethnic dispute, as was evident in Bosnia breakup. For example, there was two diasporas pitted against each other in England after the World Cup match, which led to a lot of friction. So let's look at a case study of a US foreign policy. Ethnic identity groups often form institutions that affect US foreign policy or ethnic communities abroad, most commonly in the form of ethnic lobbies. So all ethnic communities have ethnic lobbies. Identity groups as politically relevant social divisions based on shared sense of cultural distinct. So inevitably, there will be an Indian lobby, there will be a Pakistani lobby, there will be a Chinese lobby, there will be a Japanese lobby. There are different lobbies based on ethnic identities. Three ways it affects the US foreign policy. First, by framing issues. So inevitably, one of the roles of media is to frame issues. They help set the terms of debate. Okay. They help set terms of debate or put items on the country's agenda. Remember one thing, media is one of the ways whereby issues are framed. And that is why media can frame issues in various ways. These are multiple perspectives on an issue. Secondly, they are a source of information and analysis that provide a great deal of information to members of Congress and serve as a resource for other branches of government. Inevitably, governance is complex. And more often than not, the representatives remember have have limitations in terms of how much do they know or how much various uh, perspectives on a particular issue they can get. So these lobbies become sources of information. Finally, ethnic group lobbies provide policy oversight. They examine the policy of the US government, propose policies, write letters, involved in electioning activities. Now, think about the fact here is an ethnic group and they contribute to the political process by giving donation to the candidates, giving donation to the political parties. Obviously, if they are giving donations and involved in the political process, they have a say, or they would like to have a say. When they would like to have a say, they would like to lobby for things which are beneficial to their lobby or to their ethnic group against the other lobby with their interest. And remember, politics is an art of negotiation. So these three-way efforts by ethnic groups to influence US forest policy is not, again, this is not new. It has a long history, but has become increasingly active in recent years. 5 periods of ethnic lobbying: pre-World War One, World War One, Cold War, post-Cold War, and post-September 11th. Thomas Ambrosio, assistant professor of political science. In fact, I was picking up these things from from his article only. This is something not a part of your course material. This is something that I put additional to get to for you to understand how this engagement happens typically. It was the post-Cold War period that gave way to the real increase in American multiculturalism. US interests during the periods were not clearly defined, and Congress had more influence than executive. Again, who has more influence? Does, for example, in India, does the parliament have more influence or the executive branch has more influence? How does this negotiation happen? That balance of power, according to Ambrosio, allowed ethnic lobbying groups greater access to policy making and potential influence in policy formation. So, for example, if politics has more influence, or the legislative wing has more influence, then inevitably the policies which will come out will be more people oriented. Whereas if executive wing has more influence, then more often than not, they will see what is convenient for the bureaucracy rather than people. So one needs to understand this negotiation that goes on. And that is why in democracies, it's the power of the legislature which is supreme. However, the executive always has a. So it is said that post September 11th, the attack, in fact, now White House dictates foreign policy more than the Congress. Sorry. Since September 11th, quite the opposite is true. There is a re-centralization of foreign policy in the White House. That re-centralization is restricting influence over policy. In fact, democracy it might appear to be messy, but democracy works on a lot of checks and balances that way. Like the attack on Yemen. So, attack on Yemen, Aisha, is also based on economic interests. It is not just in terms of, say, for example, if you look at today, there's a lot of public opinion against, the Israel attack on the Palestinians and what is happening in the Middle East in terms of the Israel-Palestinian conflict. However, the US government seems to be pro-Israel and does not want. So, for example, there's a lot of public opinion against stopping of the war. Now, that seems to be more in terms of economic. So, remember, policy is not just a public opinion, it is made up of a lot of other factors. What is tactical, what is strategic, what is, relationship, and so on and so forth. So, there's a large economic interest because a large part of it was talking about 14% of the shipping is going through Red Sea. And this was, and that is why that attack on the Houthi rebels in Yemen. Aisha? Yes, because for a simple reason, Congress post September 11, the foreign policy has been concentrated more in White House rather than the Congress. You're right, Aisha. Okay. Then, of course, the relation between ethnic and non-ethnic interest groups. So, the professor gives the example of oil lobby versus Armenian lobby over the. Currently, there is this conflict going on between Armenia and Azerbaijan over this Nagorno-Karabakh region, which is in which Azerbaijan claims as its own, but it's predominantly populated by Armenians. So there is oil supposedly out there. So now there is an oil lobby versus the Armenian lobby. Now, who is more powerful? Who is able to push its interest over the other's interest? Because the oil lobby wants that the oil should be harnessed, it's America's interest. So all these negotiations happen. Ethnic Americans mobilize. So there's an alternate viewpoint, which is provided by another scholar, which says that ethnic Americans mobilize to influence UN foreign policy, their ability to do so is quite limited. Ethnic lobbies have more often been used to market American ideas in their home countries or to democratize their countries of origin. This is an alternate viewpoint. The first viewpoint was yes, all these lobbies are influencing foreign policy. The second viewpoint says no, they are not. They are just, it's a limited, influence. They are more often used to market American ideas in their home countries to democratize their countries of origin. When they do have influence, it's generally been at the electoral level in connection with a domestic issue or when in issues of little importance to the administration. So that's an alternate viewpoint. And inevitably, how the policy gets affected would be somewhere in between. So you have to look at multiple interests, how you mobilize. Then there is a case study of Sweden, NATO, and the role of diaspora in foreign policy, which is an article in the International Affairs, Volume 99, Issue 6 of November 23, where these authors are saying they analyze the influence of Kurdish diaspora in Sweden on the Turkish Swedish. For example, Turkey does not recognize Kurdish as a separate ethnic group. They say Kurds are Turks only, and there's a very strong Kurdish diaspora in Sweden. So Sweden was not a part of NATO. Recently, Sweden has, after the Russian-Ukraine war, Sweden applied and became a part of NATO. And how this was going about, how this negotiation was going on, shows that the Kurdish diaspora demonstrates an independent role and an ability to shape the policy process due to permeability of the political system. Policy process is becoming more domesticated, thereby constraining the roles of the executive. So inevitably, if the Indian American diaspora keeps pushing the Indian government, or the Indian diaspora, which is again one of the largest diasporas in the world, keep pushing the Indian government, and the Indian government feels that it is directly impacting the Indian politics, they might go in for a dual citizenship. So it again is a negotiation. It is vis-a-vis diaspora, vis-a-vis home constituency. There's a lot of domestication and how this works. Diasporic actors can influence foreign policy of liberal democratic states. In several European countries, composition of civil society is becoming more transnational, largely as a result of migration. Range of new and well-established diaspora groups have been emerging, which retain economic, social, and political connection to their country. So inevitably, it works in multiple ways. It's not just economic, it has to be social and political connections too. facilitate and be a source of ideation and material power in bilateral relation. But they can also add greater complexity and new policy consideration to foreign policy. So inevitably, if you see how the US balances between engagement with India and engagement with Pakistan, considering the fact that India and Pakistan have this traditional, things with each other. So, how the US president will come, if he comes in the region, where will he go? What statements did they make? So they keep balancing. Emergence of increasingly diverse society, deeply embedded in a range of transnational relation, alters the interplay between domestic and foreign policy in new and distinctive ways that constrain the autonomy of the executive in foreign policy. So, as I told you earlier, foreign policy traditionally was a distinct field. It was high politics by elite-led legacy process. Not anymore. Today, because of transnationalism, because of increased communication or faster communication, increased transportation, and globalization, there is an interplay of many, many factors which come into play. So let's look at some of the challenges of diaspora engagement. Is not easy. According to IOM, diaspora for developing strategies poses a range of significant policy challenges. How best to identify and incorporate the priorities and agenda of diasporas in established developing strategies, create trust amongst key stakeholders, how to establish successful working partnership, how to incorporate diaspora effectively. So it is not just that I create a website and I say I have these meetings. There is going to be an expectation. So if you are going to be engaging with the diaspora, there's going to be an expectation from the diaspora. And if these diasporas are remitting money, they are doing technology transfers, they are doing information transfers, there's going to be an expectation. Managing those expectations and then having the trust. Just because, for example, they are Indians, they are diasporas, does not mean they are going to be investing willy-nilly in the country. There has to be a trust which has to be established. They need to feel special because they are going to be investing. And then there are business considerations and other considerations. Entry of capital and technology support are additional diaspora obstacles because now the diaspora says, I'm investing. It's a business decision. So, and I am a part of this country, of this homeland. So, what is that special that I am getting? Whereas the business people back home might say, but we are at home. Why is that person getting more, special treatment than us? Now you need to negotiate. So, sound methodology for diaspora mapping, multiple channels of outreach, more affordable access to legal status in host countries, enable dual citizenship. So, this is generically some staples which have been brought out. Whenever a policy needs to come out, many more factors need to be seen. Lower visa cost, organized work of different stakeholders, financial instruments to attract diaspora. So there are some questions of research. Are diaspora groups more successful in claim making when they articulate interest in a universalistic discourse by justifying their claims in relation to international norms, like human and minority rights, as some research suggests? So this is a question because inevitably, when a researcher does some research, uh, he or she may not have all aspects of policy making. So one of the aspects researchers are saying is if diaspora groups make a claim based on a universalistic discourse, is that claim more likely to be taken? Or other scholars contend that the decisive factors for influence is the congruence of diaspora interest claims with strategic interest of the countries of resident. that also support the enjoy the support of general public. So if a diaspora claims, so for example, if a Cuban diaspora claims something on the US policy makers, is the rest of the American public also backing that claim? So, for example, if the Cuban diaspora says that the Cuban government is harming human interests, and the rest of the American public feel that yes, then there is more likely that claim is going to be taken seriously by policymakers. Whether an issue enjoys high or low salience among foreign policymakers. Now, inevitably, that's where, because there are multiple competing claims and the wider public and type of interest that are at stake. So, let's look at a very interesting examples. Farmers went on an agitational mode and came to Delhi to agitate on specific farm laws, and it took the government a year for them to take back that law. Transporters threatened a strike and went on a strike, and it took precisely 1 day for the government to come out with a rejoinder saying that these laws will not be applicable. There would be multiple factors why the government took more time for the farmers and less time for the transporters. You can list it out, and each one of you will have a different perspective to that. And obviously, there are multiple reasons why this happened. So there are competing claims, and inevitably, it also is that the policy makers, how much do they put relevance or put higher relevance to a particular claim, and what is taken as priority and what is not taken as priority, and the wider public and the type of interests that are at stake. So, for example, currently what Aisha talked about, US and UK attacking Houthi rebels, there was an economic interest. There was a direct economic interest. There was a larger strategic interest because inevitably the world is becoming multipolar. There is this active thing between going on between US and China, US and Russia. There are these multiple events which are happening. US also needs to demonstrate that it still has got the firepower to take care of world policy, though the world is becoming multipolar. So there are multiple reasons why a decision is taken, or an immediate decision gets taken. So these are the scholars, Lisbeth, Isabel, and Anne, who were studying the research on Swedish and Turkish relations. Extent to which diaspora groups can affect foreign policy is conditioned by two types of contextual factors: opportunity structures and the attributes of. So attributes of diaspora group also becomes important. So for example, if there are multiple diaspora groups and various diaspora groups are standing against each other, inevitably their claim may not be taken as strongly as a strong diaspora group. So maybe that is one of the reason the Malayalis or people from Kerala have got this federation in, so that the multiple diverse diaspora groups can attribute or make claim under a single umbrella. That gives more power. Opportunity structures refers to the permeability of the political system in terms of openness and access points into policy making. So, for example, if permeability is not there in terms of policy making, more often than not, even genuine claims will not be taken up. Agential attributes of different diaspora are important factors to explain the scope and varying impact that civil society actors might have on foreign policy. So, does a diaspora group have enough impact? So, for example, let's say the Indian lobby today is if you see the kind of Indians who are there in the US political system. So obviously, a diaspora group will have certain impacts in terms of foreign policy or other policy making. Cohesion of the group and the degree to which it has legitimacy to speak on behalf of the community as a whole. Whether they are competing diaspora groups that oppose the interest, whether diasporas are part of a majority or minority group in the country of origin. So if there's a minority group in the country of origin, and yet they play a significant, large part in the politics of the host nation, what we see in Canada, you will have a different outcome. Organization strength and includes an analysis of the capacity and strategies used by the groups in their advocacy to mobilize supporters. So if you see, what we are saying is there are not a deterministic cause, but multiple reasons how diaspora groups affect policy. So let's sum up. Not all migration leads to creation of loose diaspora or diaspora. There are I have picked up the sum up of the last time. Uh, this is the last time sum up. Let's look at the suggested reading, the global diaspora strategies. So sum up, let me sum up. The fact is, obviously, diaspora groups have, a say in the policy formation, but it again depends on how much the political system allows permeability of such says, how strong are the diaspora groups, how what is their claim, how do they make that claim, and then it depends on various opportunities and existential things, and whether it falls in the economic, social, political, or security related issues. Any questions? Let me switch on my video. Hi there. Any question? Guys, I hope I didn't go too fast. Okay. Thanks, Rishta. So broadly, I was trying to cover and show you multiple perspectives in terms of how engagement happens. Inevitably, policy making is, and especially in today's globalized era, becomes a little, complicated in terms of taking, fact that the diaspora groups also become a relevant stakeholders, not only NGOs, international organization, multinational organization, but diaspora groups also become a stakeholders in policy formation. So will a policy in any way with another country also affect the diaspora in the host country becomes an issue what the policymakers have to deal with. And that adds to a certain amount of complexity in the whole policy making. In fact, as I was saying, if any one of you people would want to write a paper on, you can just look at, your particular state that you come from. How is the state working on in terms of diaspora engagement? So you can go on the state's website and see what are they talking about. Is there a contact number? You can talk to the relevant persons. If there is a contact number for or a contact email ID for a contact in, let's say, various parts of the world, you can send them an email and said, this is the policy which the state is talking about. What do you have to feel? So you can take a few interviews, and it can be either an academic article or a journalistic article. And if you need any help, I can, jointly work it out with you, and we can get that paper published if anyone is interested. Setup in homeland and hostland also matters regarding You're right, Kangat, absolutely right. See, again, that's where there are various kinds of democracies. Inevitably, democracy, there is this thing about democracy being messy, but that messiness also adds a certain amount of order in that chaos. Because if there are multiple perspectives and viewpoints, then you also have a richness of a richness of landscape by which to take decisions. Because inevitably, understand, any individual or any organization is limited by the collective intelligence of the people in it. Or if there is one individual taking a decision, he or she is going to be limited by the collective intelligence of that individual. The reason why internet works better than any one of us is because of the fact internet is allowing me to get multiple perspectives of the same issue, which increases the richness of my knowledge. So obviously there could be misinformation, but I can always cross check to figure out what seems correct. There are markers. And if I limit, and democracy gives that, so a good policy should take care of multiple. Inevitably, a policy is made to take care of the largest amount of people who are going to be impacted by the policy. So if you have a policy which you have not taken how it impacts multiple diverse sections of people, that policy is not a good policy at all. Any other question? Are there any provisions for controlling or regularizing these lobby groups in countries? See, inevitably, US and Europe have a legal system of lobbying. So there are established lobbies, and they are, you can come across and say that I am, a specific lobby. So, for example, the Armenian lobby would be known out there to the policymakers. Whether it is noted down or it is regulated, see, once the lobbying is a legal thing, uh, I'm not sure whether there is you need to register it as a lobby. uh, but the fact is everybody knows that that's the group which is working on the lobby. For example, the federation, what I saw of Malayalis in America, would typically be a lobby in a way for regulating the interests of Keralites or Malayalis in America. So once, and I think US has, non-profit organizations can be registered. That's a way of regulating them. Uh, what about elections? Shresha, so inevitably, so when what we saw that Federation of Malayalis in America, they have a website in which they give out their members, and I'm sure they have regular elections. Otherwise, the claim to legitimacy goes. So more often than not, they would have elections, and that is the way they would circulate intellectual capital. So when different people come in, everybody comes with certain amount of they bring something on the table which helps the group in mobilizing in the host country or the home country. Shrestha, any other question? Okay, if there are no other questions, have a nice weekend, and I'll see you next Saturday with the next unit in the series. I think it was about citizenship, trans citizenship, transnational citizenship, and citizenship. We'll meet again next Saturday at 3 o'clock. Bye then.